Hello, staff and teachers. My name is Ms. Pagan, and I am a fourth grade remote teacher. I'm also a virtual content specialist. And today, in collaboration with the Division of the Multilingual Learners, I'd like to present to you some scaffolds or tools that can be used for this lesson. In today's lesson, Unit 5, Day 41, representing multiplication, with the focus question of how can we represent multiplication of a whole number times a fraction. The suggestion in this lesson for the implementation guide for multilingual learners is to provide sentence frames. You're also going to notice throughout this lesson that there are multiple sentence frames for students to support their thinking, and also throughout their 3 reads, which is a 3-read strategy that can be utilized to support students or engage multilingual learners. You'll notice the suggestion under engaging multilingual learners is to use the home language as a resource and to provide written and translated instructions that are visible to students at all times. Also, you'll notice that in this suggestion tool that on page 2, one of the guidance for using this resource is to promote collaboration with partners for logistical guidance and also platforms for collaboration. For that reason, I provided several tools. First, to provide home language support. Secondly, to provide sentence frames. And finally, to provide collaboration, whether you are using this lesson remotely, in person, asynchronous, or in a synchronous lesson. First, I provided a 3 reads in Spanish and also a 3 reads in English. This is the strategy that will be utilized in the introduction or in the launch section for this lesson. Also, I've provided the PowerPoint in Spanish. So the PowerPoint, in the case that you are using the PowerPoint in your Google Classroom, you can make a copy for each student, or you can use it as a group or in partnerships. Each section is written in Spanish, the introduction, questions, the sentence frames that are also present to promote language support. I highly recommend page or slide 20, where the 3 reads is broken up into questions. And so after each read, the students may then answer the questions in the blue box located on the right-hand side. As a further support, when I was teaching this lesson remotely, my students wanted to represent their fractions either on the PowerPoint or on a Google Jamboard. So I have also provided for you 2 Google Jamboards. I noticed when teaching this lesson myself that the introduction section and the exploration section were pretty significant, and I broke them up into 2 separate Jamboards. In the introduction section, one of the reasons why I provided a Google Jamboard is to utilize the tools that are on the Google Jamboard. For teachers who have not used a Google Jamboard, let me just take a moment to review the tools that are located on the left-hand side. You will notice that there is a pen, and in the window there is a marker, highlighter, and a paint tool. This can be significant when shading fractions. So in this lesson, you'll notice that you can create fractions and then shade with the paint tool. You'll also notice that is eraser, a select tool, a sticky note. I particularly use the sticky note to provide feedback for students, and they can see my feedback, whether it's in a live lesson or if the students are working asynchronously, and I can provide feedback on sticky notes and they can return to their Jamboards. There's an add image tool, and teachers just a special focus on this tool, which you will probably be using, or your students, to create fraction bars in this lesson to represent their multiplication of fractions of a whole number with a fraction. There's a text tool. And in this particular lesson, the laser tool was very beneficial for me. In this actual first slide, when I was completing the introduction or the mini lesson, in order to focus the students' attention on the number line and the actual jumps that represented adding or the repeated addition with the fraction, I used the laser tool. in live instruction. So I was able to use the laser tool and we were able to jump together as a class, and also for students to use the laser tool themselves and jump in the number line so they can visually and also in a tactile form see how the repeated addition is shown or represented in this number line, and then continue to use that to connect to the multiplication of a whole number with a fraction, and then use again to complete the other multiplication questions that are present here. You will notice that there are translated questions, translated sentence frames, especially for the 3 reads. And then finally, you will notice that there are tools that I've placed here as just an example in the case that your students are struggling to create a fraction bar. So I will place a fraction bar on this Google Jamboard, and then that can be used with a select tool and just manipulated, and can be used with a pen tool to draw sections, and then finally with a paint tool to easily color and shade. Finally, teachers, I'm providing the Explore section in a separate Google Jamboard. The reason why I've created a separate Google Jamboard in this Explore section is that I utilize this Explore section as group work. And so when I provided the launch, each child did their own launch, created their own thinking and representation of the question and responding to the sentence frames. But then I gave my students the Explore section in groups. And this allowed them to collaborate using sticky notes. And so in the sticky notes, you can have one sticky note per student. And so you can label them as you see fit. And each sticky note can represent one student in a group by simply changing the colors in a sticky note. One suggestion that I was given for a prior video was to show how I made the sticky notes into colors. It's very simple. You click on the sticky note, you can write any label that you select and then choose the color. One thing that my own students showed me is that the sticky notes can also be transparent by clicking on the final tool, and you'll just notice the writing. So by placing multiple sticky notes under each question, you'll notice that students can then collaborate as a group and each write down their own responses when completing this Google Jamboard. Finally, teachers, my suggestion as they continue to use the Explore section is to utilize the shape tool. The shape tool will allow them as they write or represent their own fractions to use a fraction bar. I just want to show once, this was also a question on how to use this fraction bar. Simply select the rectangle section, use your select tool to place it and drag it anywhere on the page. Once the fraction bar is on the page, you may click on the 3 dots that are here on the right top corner and duplicate them for the amount of fraction bars that the students might need, or they can do as well. You can delete and you can even order by placing a fraction bar to the front or to the back of each slide. So teachers, in this Explore section, you'll notice that there are also sentence frames to provide support for thinking and also to provide support for dialogue, and also to provide support for collaboration if you decide to use multiple sticky notes as a group. Finally, teachers, in this section in the Explore, there is a nice section where students can represent 6 times 3/8. Please recommend to the students to utilize the tools in the Google Jamboard, to use the pen, the marker, to use the sticky notes, and to use the shapes to represent their multiplication of a whole number with their multiplication of a fraction. Again, teachers, this is Ms. Pagan. I hope that you find useful the Spanish PowerPoint, 3 reads poster, and the Google Jamboards in Spanish and in English for the introduction section and the Explore section to be utilized for home language support, discourse, collaboration, and also for the tools in the Google Jamboard. Please feel free to write comments on this YouTube video so that we can best support you and questions on any of the tools that we're using here. Thank you. And I continue to look at your suggestions to help support you as we continue to educate our students.